We have here something that I think is quite important to almost all of us. We have here a nice, fresh $1 bill. $1 bill, okay? Now the old $1 bill here with George on it, well, it doesn't buy what it once did, but it still can be very helpful, can it? Can get us a daily paper, even gets me on the city bus. Not a bad thing to have. Well, in the gospel we just heard, Jesus uses money to teach us a very important lesson. In the gospel, two groups that opposed Jesus came together to try and trap him into saying something that could get him in a lot of trouble. Quite simply, they ask, should we pay taxes to the Roman Empire, which occupied Israel at the time, or not? And remember Jesus' answer. Repay to Caesar what is Caesar's, and repay to God what is God's. Now, what problem Jesus faced is if he said, well, yes, pay the tax. Well, he could be accused of being disloyal to his own Jewish people. Or if he said, no, don't pay the tax, the Romans could come after him for stirring up a rebellion. So you notice now that Jesus really didn't exactly answer the question, but he raised it to a higher level. And that's what's important for us tonight, because it's a question that all of us have to answer. Now, in the gospel, Jesus wasn't given a lecture about government and taxes. What he was talking about, he's teaching. He's teaching us. And he said, look, in the end, since all things belong to God, you have to decide whether any government is doing what God asks or not. That's something you've got to decide. But the real lesson for us is in the second half of Jesus' answer. Repay to God what is God's. Are we concerned enough about what we owe God? What does God ask of us? And how are we trying to repay that? And first and foremost of all, we owe God faith. This is what God asks of us, to put our trust in God. Our faith may not be perfect, and faith leaves room for all the doubts that most of us have. But somehow, we have to be trying to repay God with faith. A little while ago, I attended the funeral of a man that I had known probably 30 years. And his funeral, in its own unusual way, gave us a pretty good picture, a pretty good idea of the faith that we owe God. Now, Peter, and I know him, he had spent most of his life on the streets. He was dealing with his addictions and demons. And his uncle, as his uncle said at the funeral, Peter had his own ways. But then a woman got up, and she gave a good description of the faith that we owe to God. She said, I too am on the streets. I know what it's like. But I can assure you that God is there and God will get you through no matter what. The woman sums it up well. We're called to put our trust in God, to believe that God's there for us, and God will get us through. Well then, next part of the funeral, about 20 people at least got up and told of the many good deeds that Peter had done for them. He helped so many people whenever he had a chance, even in a small way. One woman told about how she and others lived in a rather troubled apartment house on South Ave. And she said, each morning, Peter would give the roll call. Make sure is everybody okay? Did everybody make it through the night? Is everybody safe? It really sums up what God asks of us. To believe that God's there for us, and God will get us through, and to do good deeds. Whatever we can, even if those deeds are small things. Now, for most of us, the faith that we have is often put to the test, isn't it? Our faith is put to the test. I was talking to a man in jail, and he believed he was there for a crime that he believed he didn't commit. And he said, I don't believe that there's a God that's there and cares for me. Because if there were a God looking out after me, I wouldn't be here. I went to church every Sunday. I tried to do good for other people. Yet where is God for me? Where is God for me now? Now, you don't have to be in jail to wonder that same question. Maybe we've asked that question too sometimes, huh? Might be in a time of sickness. Might be the loss of a loved one. So let's stop for a minute and just think of a time that we too wondered, where is God now? Where's God? Well, one thing we can be sure of is that we can't outgive God. We can't outgive God. Even if we give that God the smallest of faith, God repays us so many times more. So many times more. God repays us. In the end, the woman on the street had it right. We're called to believe that God is there and God will get us through, even if we give God the smallest and the weakest of faith. So as we continue on now and get ready to share in the body and blood of Christ, let's ask our God for the help that we need. Ask God for the help that we need to have the trust that God is there and God will get us through.